My name's Steve Valdes-Robles. I'm a senior attorney for the Nature Conservancy, and our project is the Belize Blue Bond. The Nature Conservancy was trying to solve a problem that there is a huge demand on nature to provide resources for human consumption, whether that be fisheries, forestry, other forms of natural resources. And there is a real lack of financing to protect those resources. And so we looked around and tried to think of what are ways that we can generate adequate financing for conservation and at the same time work with governments to protect their natural resources. One idea that existed was debt for nature swaps, which the US government had done in the 1980s and 1990s. The problem was that those programs largely have all wound down. They were generally small in scale. And in the current modern world, bilateral debt between sovereigns is a small fraction of the total sovereign debt that's out there. And so TNC began thinking about how can we modernize this debt for nature swap? And how can we bring it into the modern financial system? We came up with using private capital markets with credit enhancement from the US Development Finance Corporation that would allow us to raise capital at favorable investment grade rates and use that capital to help emerging market countries secure the resources they need to refinance their debt and use that refinancing to generate funds for conservation. And Belize presented a really great opportunity to bring that mechanism into action. So we had been working with Belize for over 30 years on all kinds of different projects. And over the last couple of years with the pandemic, Belize, whose economy is highly dependent on tourism, had not been able to service its debts. And a number of times over Belize's history, they have defaulted on their debt. And so this became a real opportunity to help Belize get out of a very difficult debt situation, while at the same time helping it secure its natural resources. It would both help them better protect their oceans, which are important for their tourism, but also for local fisheries and other sustainable marine work. And it would also generate funds for protection of those resources and lessen their debt burden. And so we worked with Belize to come to a number of conservation commitments, most notably putting 30% of their ocean under protection through participatory, stakeholder-driven processes to sustainably manage their oceans. And so the core components of this deal were threefold. First, because we are the Nature Conservancy, the conservation commitments. We had to work with Belize in order to define what were the undertakings that they would take to protect their ocean. The second was the sustainable financing for that. And the third was the debt restructuring to free up the funds necessary and at the same time to significantly lessen the government's debt burden. We did that by raising capital to make a loan to the government. The government used that loan to repurchase their debt from bondholders at a 45% discount to face value. They also used some of the loan to finance an endowment that will support conservation once this deal is done, and to fund some of the costs of doing this project. The other aspect of this was what we called a conservation funding agreement, where the government would use some of its savings to support conservation in country. The amount of conservation that we estimate is going to be generated over the 20-year life of the deal is $180 million, including $4 million a year in local currency to do marine conservation, which is about quadruple the budget before the project happened. Debt restructuring helped reduce their debt to GDP ratio by more than 12%. This deal was particularly complex because we had to both issue a bond through a repackaging vehicle. The proceeds of that bond were then loaned to a TNC subsidiary, who then on-lent the funds to the government of Belize. The government of Belize used those lent funds in order to finance its tender of its existing bond and to buy and retire that back. We also had political risk insurance from the U.S. Development Finance Corporation. What that did was it allowed us to get a AA rating on the debt, so an investment grade rating, allowing us to get it at significantly more favorable economic terms than Belize, which was currently in selective default, could raise on its own. We also had some other characteristics here to protect Belize, such as parametric insurance, which means that if a hurricane were to hit Belize and do damage to its economy, the insurance will cover a bond coupon payment and provide immediate debt relief, allowing the government to instead use those monies to help rebuild and repair any damage from the hurricane. And one of the real challenges of this deal was to put all those pieces together. The legal issues involved in this project were rather broad, involving securities law, structured finance, Delaware trusts, and local Belizean law. We've had lawyers involved from the very beginning, from a broad variety of practice areas and specialties, including multiple law firms who supported us pro bono, and of course the law firms representing the other parties in the transaction. For the Nature Conservancy, Shearman and Sterling, Ropes and Gray, and DLA Piper all helped us with different aspects of the deal. Belize was represented by Sullivan and Cromwell, and Credit Suisse by Allen and Overy. In addition, a number of other firms were involved for different aspects of the deal, such as the bond repurchase, the structured product involved Cayman vehicle, and other specialized areas of law. And we were all able to work together to get to this common goal of restructuring their debt and producing an outcome that will benefit nature, that will benefit people, and that will benefit the entire country of Belize. We know that other organizations are looking at this transaction and trying to replicate it, and we think that that's a wonderful thing. The key components here are components that other organizations are able to do and replicate. You do need to find a source of credit support, but there are many development finance institutions across the world who are able to provide that. There are many banks out there who can provide the financing, and there are many, many countries that need financing for conservation. So all of the key resources, all the key needs are out there. And so we really hope to see this model evolve and develop to really bring commercial capital to bear to help create sustainable financing for conservation or for social outcomes, because this doesn't have to just be for conservation outcomes, it can be societal outcomes. And so we think this is a really great model that has the potential to unlock a significant amount of sustainable financing to help countries around the world improve livelihoods, improve protection of their natural resources, and build a sustainable future.